So this is the PowerPoint on in-text citations, which is a super big part of English 1020 or Comp 2. Big requirement for this class, so I kind of want you all to know how to do them correctly, because I've heard from students in the past that various examples they've given me of how they've been taught how to do it in high school. I've also had students tell me that they've never ever done an in-text citation before or cited anything before. So I kind of wanted to go ahead and get this out of the way so that everyone's on the same page and no one's confused when they get to their midterm or the final paper. So why are in-text citations important? So instead of just your paper being just you talking, basically, why do we want to have in-text citations? Whether this be um, uh, directly from the source itself or from your readings or your research. Those are kind of the two types of in-text citations that you're going to see in this specific class, and in specifically um, classes dealing with media like we are doing. So those are the two types. You have the first one, which pulls citations directly from your piece of media. So this can be a quote from the movie, citing a specific scene, those kinds of things. And then the second type of in-text citation is actually more of a research citation, which pulls from your sources that you found from your annotated bibliography or sources from those Parker readings, which are a requirement for your midterm and your final paper. So why is it important that we include both of those citations in your academic papers? They're a super crucial component of academic writing, as they provide readers with a clear indication of where information or ideas came from. No matter what your major is, you're definitely going to have to cite things for the rest of your college career. It doesn't matter if you're a nursing major, it doesn't matter if you're communications or business or English or whatever you may be, you're going to have to cite things the rest of your academic career, which is why this class is so important to your college career. It's not just a gen ed class that you have to take, it's lessons like these. So learning about how to do in-text citations correctly that actually helps you build on the foundation of your major and your career. So they basically acknowledge the contributions of other scholars and provide credibility to your own arguments. So instead of just typing out your own argument and really providing no evidence to back that up, it's basically the evidence or the proof for what you're arguing here. It provides credibility to your argument, so it makes your reader want to believe you more because they see that, oh, other scholars are saying this, or they're not just saying this happens in the movie, they're pulling a quote directly from the movie. So it just helps it be more credible and a better argument, basically. So, how do we cite in our body paragraphs? Here's an important thing to note. This should kind of be a little bit of a review from Comp 1, but you should never ever have a quote um, in your introduction or your conclusion. It should only take place in those body paragraphs, so the paragraphs in the middle that actually take up the majority of your argument. Um, but you should have several quotes per paragraph. You should have several quotes of dialogue or several scenes cited from whatever piece of media you chose per paragraph, and a couple of quotes pulled from your research to back up your argument in that paragraph as well. You never really want to have a paragraph that's missing a quote at all. It should have at least one of those in it. You also never really just want to drop a quote into the middle of a paragraph without some kind of transition there. You don't want to just have it there and then not explain what the quote means to your argument, or just drop it in the middle randomly. If you read it out loud to somebody, it sounds really random and blunt to just put a quote in the middle of your paragraph without explaining where it came from or what it means to your argument. Your quote should kind of always be followed by an explanation or breakdown of what the author is specifically saying in that quote, or how it contributes to the argument as evidence. That'll lean more towards pulling it from your piece of media. Um, but your quote should never just be randomly dropped in. There should actually be some explanation around the quote and surrounding it, kind of as a buffer almost. And here's an example of how exactly it should look in your paper. So if you go through your paper and your quotes don't look pretty much exactly like this, it's not really correct, and it's going to sound really weird when read out loud. So you want to make sure that yours directly follows this. So you can use transition phrases like this to kind of lead your reader into your quote to make it sound a lot more academic and a lot more smoothly transition between sentence to sentence. So, as one scholar writes, always have a comma before you do your quote, then put in the quote, and then you're going to have author and then the page number. Now, if you're citing a piece of media, you want to do the director or the creator, and then that's it. Just the director or just the creator. You don't have a page number to work with here. But if you're citing a quote like that, that's what you'll want to use. And there's a lot of good resources on Purdue OWL of how to cite specifically movies, TV shows, video games, those kinds of things. And I'm going to be linking that on D2L as well for you all to have. So here's kind of an important breakdown of in-text citations. So you want to think about these specific things when you're quoting in your paper. The placement. So where does an in-text citation go? It should go throughout every single body paragraph. Typically in the middle, you don't really want to ever start a paragraph with a quote. It just is really odd and strange. Trust me, it's just weird. You want to be sticking to those transitions here. So like as one scholar writes, or as the director of the movie says, or as this character says in the TV show, or however you want to do it. Those transitions are always a good way to make sure your quote's not just dropped in. Your format, you always want to make sure it's correctly MLA formatted. So like I said on the last slide, it kind of gives you the template there, or the formula if you want to think of it more in math terms. You want to make sure that you're citing paraphrased information also. You never ever want to just pull ideas from someone and not say where they came from. That's not saying that you have to directly put those in quotation marks, because what quotation marks do is that's saying that that is verbatim, word for word, exactly what that person said. But you still want to cite your paraphrased information also. So if you're pulling ideas from any of your points of research, but you're still not using it word for word, you still want to cite it within those paragraphs at the end. Um, I mean, those parentheses at the end, sorry. Just so it's clear that you're not plagiarizing, basically. And then consistency. You want to make sure that you're consistently using quotes throughout your entire essay because, like I said, it lends credibility to your argument and makes it a lot stronger. So you want to make sure that you have at least a few quotes per paragraph. So here's some examples here. So you can quote or paraphrase that directly references a source here. So here's a couple of ways you could do this. Um, According to Eric Harehuth, the world of Ratatouille explores how sensorial events, such as fine dining and physical comedy, contribute to radical changes to communities and individuals. So, because you're leading in that transition phrase with the author himself, you don't necessarily have to put the author's last name at the end of that. You can just put the page number. But then, if you don't do that and you lead into it this way, as one scholar writes, what distinguishes Ratatouille from this rat pack is a consistent admission of protagonist Remy's own rathood at the expense of anthropomorphic impersonations of human beings. And because you didn't have the author's last name within that transition phrase, as one scholar writes, you always want to make sure that you're putting that at the end in those parentheses. So we have Holiday 97, which is the page number here that I pulled it from. Now, of course, there are a lot of ways to quote something. Sometimes your quote may be weird, or sometimes you may want to leave out certain words, add in words, certain things. So, here's some examples and kind of a little FAQ of what to do when your quote doesn't exactly follow this model exactly. So what do you do if your quote is super long, like a whole paragraph? You don't want to really copy and paste that; it's a little too long. But you want to pull some ideas from it. So what do you do if you want to leave out part of a sentence or part of a quote? Like how do you actually quote that in correct format? So if you want to take out part of a quote for like irrelevancy, you can do so using ellipses. So ellipses are those three dots that you find in succession from one another. So here's an example here. The protagonist, ellipses, finds it impossible to wholeheartedly involve himself in American culture, and then the author's name and the page number. So what those ellipses here indicate to your reader, so me in this case or whoever, indicates that you've left out a bit of information that wasn't relevant to your argument or wasn't relevant to the sentence itself. So you can always do that when you're omitting stuff. Of course, you can always do the opposite as well and add in words to the quote. Of course, you always want to do this with caution and not just, put words in another author's mouth, for example. But if you want to add in words that make your overall sentence sound better, here's a way you could do it. The protagonist, consequently, finds it impossible to wholeheartedly involve himself in American culture. So, if you want to add in words to the quote, you always want to use brackets, which are the symbols around consequently there. And you can always refer back to this video for how to do this if you want to do this in your own paper. And then this, what do I do if the quote is in the middle of my sentence, or if you just want to use one word? If they just use maybe they're coining a specific phrase to describe something, your author is coining a specific phrase to describe something, or you just want to pull one or two words from that author, but not the entire sentence itself. Here's what you want to do here. So the author's mythology and its relation to Western culture lends itself open to interpretation, yet there is the looming impossibility for characters to ever, quote, wholeheartedly be immersed in American culture, and then the author's last name and the page number. So what this tells me from the reader's standpoint is that everything from the author's mythology all the way to ever, and then of course be immersed in American culture, anything not in those quotation marks means that is your own words. And anything within the quotation marks means that you're pulling it from the source itself. So that tells me that you're using the word wholeheartedly, coined by Bloomgeist here. But everything else, this is also telling me that everything else in this sentence belongs to you and is your own words. So these are all some things that you want to consider when quoting sources. Of course, if you ever need help with this, email me. I've been doing this many years, so it's kind of just like the back of knowing it like the back of my hand at this point, but I understand if like this is really confusing in a weird formula. So you can always refer back to this PowerPoint or email me. There's also a ton of great resources online for how to quote things and how to in-text cite things. If you ever need help, those resources are out there as well.